Hello, everybody. Welcome to my early predictions for the final two match days for the CONCACAF Hex, the final international break, which will determine the teams who qualify for the World Cup and who goes to the playoffs. So I'm going to give my predictions for these last six games. First, here are the current standings. Mexico is in first with 18 points. Costa Rica is in second with 15. Panama is in third with 10. The USA is in fourth with 9 points. Honduras is in fifth with 9 points, but the USA with a superior goal difference. And Trinidad and Tobago in sixth with only 3 points. So let's just jump right in. On match day 9, we have Mexico playing Trinidad and Tobago, Costa Rica versus Honduras, and the United States versus Panama. Mexico is already qualified, but they want to uh, end their qualification campaign in the Hex with a perfect unbeaten record, and they're just a much better side. I think Trinidad and Tobago is the weakest team in this Hex. They've won only one of their games. They're sitting on 3 points. They're poised to become the worst Hex team since Panama was in 2006, and I just don't see how Trinidad and Tobago. I just don't see them getting a result here. I think this should be their hardest game of the entire campaign, and Osorio very much wants to win this game as well because Mexico wants to extend. Um, like I said, their unbeaten streak in this Hex, and I don't know. They almost dropped points at home to Panama because Panama arguably should have equalized late on in that game in Mexico City, but um, I just don't see Mexico making that same mistake here, which almost costs them in that Panama game. I think Mexico wins this match. I don't think it'll be like overwhelming. I think it'll be a 2-0 victory for Mexico. Costa Rica can seal qualification here with a win. And they could probably, in the worst case scenario, Costa Rica can seal qualification with a loss to Honduras at home, depending if the results in their other games go their way. But I think Costa Rica wants to wrap up qualification, and I think they beat Honduras here at home. I think Costa Rica will win this game. I'm going to go with another 2-0. And then we have the United States versus Panama. This is going to be the decisive game in this Hex, in my opinion, that determines who finishes in the third place spot, who finishes in fourth. Though Honduras is still very much in the conversation as well because they're only behind by 1 point at the moment to Panama, and they are on level with points at the U.S., just behind on goal difference. My prediction for this match, Panama arguably should have had a draw in Mexico. So maybe, karma will play a role here and they'll get a result here on the road in the U.S. I honestly, from an objective standpoint as possible, I don't see the United States losing another game at home. I just don't see it. Against Mexico and Costa Rica, yes, but not against Panama, in my opinion. I want to say this game will be a draw. I, but I think the U.S. is going to steal it. I think the U.S. is going to nick it here, and I think the U.S. will win 2-1. So where does that put us? On the final match day, Honduras versus Mexico, Panama versus Costa Rica, and Trinidad and Tobago versus the United States. Mexico, up until this point, will not have lost a single game. Will they become the first ever team in the CONCACAF Hex to not lose at least one game? I think they stand a very good chance of becoming that, but I think Honduras will actually win here. Because Mexico, again, they've qualified, but at this point, they will have qualified 3 match days ago. Honduras will be desperate. They will be the team at home. They're going to be looking to avenge dropping points against the United States when they should have won. They should have gotten all 3 points if not for that Bobby Wood equalizer. I just see balance, guys. I look at football as like a balancing force, and I don't know if Honduras drops points in 2 home games in a row. You have to think in Mexico's very last game in the CONCACAF X, their very last game. Sure, they'll want to keep their unbeaten record, but at the same time, Osorio is probably going to send a reserve experimental lineup all the way down to San Pedro Sula. And this is the very last game of the Hex. Like I said, Mexico has qualified comfortably already. I could see Honduras coming out and being desperate for the winning, because Mexico traditionally does not have anything except a difficult time on the road in San Pedro Sula. I believe that they drew 0-0 in the previous round of qualifying when Honduras and Mexico were in the same group along with Canada and El Salvador. This was last year, I believe. So Honduras is very difficult to play on the road for anybody in the Hex. And for a Mexican team that just doesn't have that motivation, or at least would not have that motivation, that imperative to get a result here because they don't need it, I think Honduras would get a win here. And I think it would be maybe 1-0 or maybe 2-1 or 1-0. I think Honduras would win. Panama versus Costa Rica. Panama realizes it would be a great opportunity for them to finally qualify for the World Cup. Same scenario here. Costa Rica has already qualified. Panama should have arguably beaten Costa Rica in Costa Rica when Costa Rica went down to 10 men, but Panama got a draw away from home. Here, against their rivals and neighbors, the Costa Ricans, I think Panama gets a home victory here to put the pressure on the United States in their game against Trinidad on the same night. I think Panama will win this match, and I think they'll win it. I'll say 1-0. And then Trinidad and Tobago versus the United States. I think this will be a draw. I do. The United States struggled with Trinidad in the previous round. They drew them in Trinidad 0-0. Trinidad gave us a lot of problems when we played them at home when we beat them 2-0 earlier this year. I just don't see Trinidad and Tobago finishing this Hex with next to nothing. And the United States is not in the best of forms. I think that's why the most important game for the United States will be the Panama one, not the Trinidad and Tobago one. It's just, I don't know. It's just a feeling. I think this match would be a draw, and I think it would be 1-1. So where does that leave the standings on the come the conclusion of qualifying? Who qualifies for the World Cup, and in what order? Well, it would look like this. Mexico would win the Hex with 21 points. Costa Rica would come in second with 18 points. Trinidad and Tobago would come in last with 4 points. And these 3 teams right here, Honduras, USA, and Panama, I believe will all be separated from each other by 1 point. Who finishes in 5th? It's Honduras with 12 points. Who gets the 3rd placed spot and who goes to the playoff? Panama or the United States? Who gets the last direct spot to the World Cup? And who goes to the playoff? Well, both Panama, according to my results, and the United States would finish level on 13 points each. And with a similar goal difference as well. But by virtue of number of goals scored, I believe the United States would qualify directly and get that 3rd place spot, sending Panama to the playoff. And guess what? In very similar fashion, to how they were eliminated in the 2013 cycle. Because if Panama had beaten the United States 2-1 in that final game, they would have qualified for the playoffs ahead of Mexico by virtue of number of goals scored. Same number of points, same goal difference, but with a greater number of goals scored. And here I believe the United States will pip Panama to the third placed spot, sending Panama to the playoffs by virtue of number of goals scored. So my final standings here are Mexico with 21 points, Costa Rica with 18, the United States with 13, Panama with 13, but with an inferior goal difference, Honduras with 12. You see how close it is between these three. Trinidad and Tobago with 4. And these are just my early predictions, subject to change by the time the next international break comes along. We'll see if they change. Leave a comment below, like, subscribe. I'll see you guys in my next video. Until then, much love and peace out.